I still remember the moment she told me she was pregnant. We were sitting in her one-bedroom apartment in Indiranagar, Bangalore. The fan was humming overhead, and the aroma of filter coffee drifted from the kitchen, something comforting, something normal. But nothing felt normal when she dropped the news. Vikram. I'm pregnant, she said, barely above a whisper. I blinked. What? I'm pregnant, she repeated, with tears welling in her eyes, though I couldn't quite tell if they were from joy or fear. Her name was Neha. We'd been dating for almost a year. We met through mutual friends at a weekend getaway in Cork. She was warm, easy to talk to, with this spark that made you feel like anything was possible. I was 28 then, working as a business analyst in Whitefield, climbing the corporate ladder, while she was a freelance graphic designer. Truthfully, I wasn't ready to be a dad. Not even close. But something in her voice that day. Maybe it was the vulnerability, maybe it was the idea of building something together, made me say the words that would change everything. I'm with you. We'll figure this out. She burst into tears. I hugged her. And just like that, I made a choice to step up, to be there, to be a father. The following months were a whirlwind. Doctor appointments at Manipal Hospital, shopping for baby clothes at Commercial Street, painting the tiny room in my rented 2 BHK in Coromandel sky blue because Neha was sure it would be a boy. I wasn't just watching it happen. I was involved. Invested. I wasn't legally married to Neha, but in every other way, we were a family. When the baby was born on a rainy August morning, I held him in my arms for the first time. He was small, wrinkly, and crying like the world was ending. I cried too. The nurse had to remind me to support his head. I remember looking down at him and whispering, "I've got you, little man." We named him Arav. I chose it. Strong, simple, and meaningful, it means peaceful. Funny, considering the storm he was born into. From that day on, I became dad. Not Vikram, not the boyfriend, not the guy who stayed, just dad. Every 2 a.m. feeding, every diaper change, every fever, every giggle, I was there. I didn't just love Arav. I belonged to him. Neha seemed grateful, at least at first. She'd sometimes look at me, especially when I was bouncing Arav on my knee, and say, "You're going to be such a good father." I never thought to question anything. Why would I? He looked a little like me, or so everyone said. His eyes, especially dark, alert, always watching. People say you change when you become a parent. That your world shrinks and expands at the same time. They're right. Everything in my life began revolving around him. Promotions at work, weekend trips with friends, all took a back seat. Arav became my priority, my joy, my reason to be better. But here's the thing no one tells you. Sometimes, the story you're living isn't the real story. Sometimes, you're playing a part in someone else's lie. And that's exactly what I was doing, for 5 whole years. If you had seen us together, you wouldn't have doubted for a second that Arav was my son. He was 5 now. Curious, talkative, and impossible to keep still. Every morning started with a question, sometimes about dinosaurs, sometimes about the moon, and sometimes about why people had to go to work. And every night ended with his small fingers curled around mine as I read him his favorite bedtime story, The Gruffalo, for what must have been the 100th time. We had rituals. Every Sunday was pancake day. I'd let him help, which mostly meant flour everywhere and him sneaking chocolate chips from the counter. Friday evenings were our park runs. There's this small playground behind the HSR Layout Civic Center, nothing fancy, just a slide, a rusted swing, and a battered seesaw, but that place was ours. He called me Appa. Not Dad. Not Baba. Appa. The first time he said it, I remember freezing. Like something had shifted inside me. All the doubt, all the anxiety I'd felt about not being ready to be a father gone in that instant. There were struggles, of course. Neha's freelance work became more erratic. Some months she had big projects, others she barely brought in anything. The financial burden fell mostly on me. I didn't mind it. I'd taken on a promotion at work, started doing weekend consulting gigs, anything to make sure Arif had everything he needed. But slowly, I started noticing something off. Neha was distant. Cold, even. There were days she'd be gone before Arif woke up and back only after he was asleep. I'd ask her about it and she'd brush it off with a work meeting or client dinner. She rarely joined us at the park anymore. When I brought it up, she'd snap, "You wanted to be super dad, didn't you? So be it." Still, I didn't push. I thought maybe she was overwhelmed. Maybe this wasn't the life she imagined. Maybe she was tired of being a mom. But Arif? He was my anchor. I remember once, after a particularly long day, I came home exhausted, irritated, the kind of day where nothing goes right. I barely managed to warm up some leftovers and collapsed on the couch. Arif climbed onto my lap, looked up at me with those big brown eyes, and said, "Appa, you forgot to smile today." God. That line gutted me. I smiled so hard after that, it hurt. I scooped him up and spun him around until we both fell onto the floor laughing. He had that effect on me. Joy in its purest form. I taught him how to ride a bicycle in our apartment's parking lot. We practiced every evening after I got home. I'd hold the seat, running behind him until he wobbled less and smiled more. The day he rode on his own, he turned back and shouted, "Appa, I'm doing it. I'm doing it." And I clapped like a madman in the middle of the road, not caring what the watchman or neighbors thought. Those 5 years, they weren't perfect. But they were real. At least to me. There's something sacred about the bond between a father and his son, not just the big moments, but the quiet ones. Holding his hand as we crossed the street. Letting him sleep on my chest when he had nightmares. Singing silly songs during bath time. Packing his school bag and double-checking it twice, just to make sure he hadn't forgotten his crayons. I poured every ounce of myself into being a good father. Never, not once, did it occur to me that he might not be mine. But that's the cruel part of lies. They don't always come with warning signs. Sometimes, they hide in plain sight until something cracks wide open. And for me, that moment came out of nowhere. A phone call. A hospital. A truth I wasn't prepared for. It was a Thursday afternoon, one of those hectic days where nothing seems to go as planned. I was in a client meeting at work, half listening, half watching the clock. Neha was supposed to pick up Arif from school and take him to his swimming class in Bellender. But around 3:20 p.m., my phone started buzzing non-stop. First a call from an unknown number, then another, then a text. "This is Dr. Anita from Hopewell Hospital. Your son has been admitted. Please call us back immediately." My stomach dropped. I excused myself, fumbled with the phone, and called the number back with trembling hands. The doctor's voice was calm but urgent. "Your son collapsed during his swim lesson. He's stable now, but we need you to come in immediately. We're running tests." I don't remember much of the ride to the hospital. Just blaring horns, the click of the seatbelt, and my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. When I reached Hopewell, near Sarjapur Road, I ran straight to the emergency wing. I saw Arif on the hospital bed, tiny, pale, hooked up to wires and monitors. His eyes were closed, lips dry. I've never felt fear like that. It was a hollow, all-consuming kind of fear that made the world spin. Neha was already there, standing in the corner like a statue. She didn't rush to him. She didn't even look at me. I barely registered her. All I could see was Arif. The doctor pulled me aside. "We're checking for some enzyme deficiencies, could be something genetic. We'll need blood samples from both parents for matching." I nodded without hesitation. "Of course. Take whatever you need." I signed forms, gave my sample, and sat beside Arif for hours. I held his little hand, whispering, "Appa's here, you're going to be okay." He finally woke up around 7 p.m. His eyes fluttered open, and he managed a weak, "Appa?" I smiled through tears. I wanted to scoop him up and run far away from this sterile place and the machines, the wires, the questions. They kept him for observation overnight. The next morning, just as he was eating idli from the hospital tray and joking about how nurses wear superhero masks, the doctor came in with a clipboard and a strange look. "Mr. Vikram, I need to speak with you privately." I followed her to a side office, expecting something medical, a treatment plan, maybe a scary diagnosis. What I got instead was a sentence that made my world implode. "The genetic markers from your sample don't match with Ariv's. You're not a biological match." I stared at her, not understanding. "What does that mean?" She hesitated. "It means, you're not his biological father." I couldn't breathe. I must have laughed this short, awkward, disbelieving laugh. "There has to be a mistake. You've mixed up the samples." She shook her head gently. "We triple-check every pediatric case, especially with genetic conditions. There's no error." Everything went silent. My legs went numb. My ears rang. The words just wouldn't make sense. Not his biological father? How? Why? I stumbled out of the room, walked blindly past nurses and patients, past the waiting room, back to Ariv's bedside. I looked at him. His little face, so familiar, so mine in every way that mattered. And yet, suddenly, a stranger. I wanted to scream. But I couldn't. Not in front of him. Neha was standing near the window now, arms crossed. I walked up to her slowly and whispered, "We need to talk." She didn't look surprised. Not even a little. That's when I knew she already knew. And she'd known the whole time. We left the hospital later that evening. Ariv was better, tired, but chatty again, his cheeks filling out with a little color. He sat in the back seat, humming a song from his cartoons, completely unaware that the world I thought I lived in had just crumbled. Neha didn't say a word the entire drive back. Not one. That night, after Ariv was asleep, curled up in his Spider-Man pajamas, clutching his toy car, I finally looked her in the eye and asked, "Is it true?" She didn't ask what I meant. She knew. "Yes," she said, softly. "It's true." I didn't shout. I couldn't. There was no energy left in me for rage. Just a sinking feeling like someone had hollowed out my chest. "I want a DNA test," I said, even though deep down, I already knew the answer. She shrugged. "Fine. Do whatever you need." The next morning, I called a private lab in Indiranagar. They scheduled a home visit. 2 days later, they came, polite, efficient. They took cheek swabs from both Ariv and me. I tried to act normal while he sat on my lap, confused but cooperative. He asked, "Is this like the hospital nurse thing?" And I smiled, told him it was just a silly test. The results came in after a week. I still remember the moment I opened the email. I was alone in my bedroom, Neha having gone to stay at her sister's for space, whatever that meant. There it was. Stark, clinical, undeniable. Probability of paternity, 0%. 0. I read it again. And again. Hoping it was a glitch, a formatting error, anything. But it wasn't. It was the truth. I sat there for what felt like hours. Just me, the whir of the ceiling fan, and the cold realization that I had been living a lie for 5 years. Every memory, first steps, first words, school admissions, bedtime stories, all of it suddenly felt stolen. Not by Ariv, he was innocent. But by her. Neha. And I had to know, why? I called her. She answered on the first ring. "We need to talk," I said. My voice was steady, too calm for what I felt. "I know," she replied. I met her at a cafe in Koramangala. We sat outside, away from people, the kind of space where conversations like ours didn't belong. "Why, Neha?" I asked. "Why didn't you tell me?" She stirred her coffee for a long time before speaking. "I wasn't sure in the beginning. When I found out I was pregnant, I thought you were the father. But when I did the math, there was a chance it could be someone else's. I blinked. Someone else's? She nodded slowly. I was with someone briefly. Before we got serious. We weren't exclusive yet. I thought it was over. And you just never thought to tell me? Even after you gave birth? Even after watching me raise him? Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't feel sorry for her. Not even close. I didn't think it mattered. You were such a good father. You loved him so much. And he loves you. I didn't want to ruin that. So you lied? I said, the words sharp. She looked down. I was scared. And then it just became easier to stay silent. I stared at her, this woman I had trusted, lived with, built a family with, and I realized I didn't even know who she truly was. I stood up, heart pounding. You didn't just lie to me, Neha. You stole 5 years of truth from both of us. After that conversation in the cafe, I thought I had heard it all. That I had hit rock bottom. But I was wrong. There was still more deeper lies, darker truths, and I was about to hear them all. A few days later, Neha texted me. I owe you the full truth. Can we talk? Please. I didn't want to see her again. But something told me I needed to hear everything, not for her, not even for me, but for Arif. Because despite the truth of biology, he was still my son in every way that mattered. We met in Cubbon Park, near the Rose Garden. I sat on a bench, arms folded, feeling 10 years older than I was. She arrived in a plain blue kurta, no makeup, hair tied back, stripped of the Neha I once knew. She didn't waste time. I never meant to hurt you, Vikram. But I did. And I need to say it all now. The man, the one who is probably Arif's biological father, his name is Ritesh. My stomach twisted. That name wasn't familiar, which somehow made it worse. I met him before you and I became serious. It was casual. Just a few weeks. We weren't even in a relationship. I looked at her. Did he know about the pregnancy? She hesitated. No. I didn't tell him. I was already with you by then. You were stable, kind, reliable. And when I told you I was pregnant, you were happy. She paused, trying to hold herself together. I wanted that life. With you. I convinced myself the baby had to be yours. But there was always that voice in the back of my head. And when he was born, I asked. She lowered her gaze. I saw it then. The eyes. The dimple. I knew. But you were holding him, crying, calling him your little prince. I didn't have the heart to ruin that moment. My jaw clenched. So you made the choice to keep lying. She nodded, tears finally spilling. Every time you played with him, taught him how to ride his cycle, stayed up with him when he had a fever. I felt like a fraud. But also grateful. Because you were the kind of father no child should ever lose. It was hard to stay angry when the pain in her voice was so real. But it didn't make what she did any less wrong. Did you ever think about telling me? I asked. So many times, she whispered. Especially when he started asking why he doesn't look like either of us. But then you'd walk in with his favorite snack or fix his toy or teach him a new word in Tamil, and I was a coward, Vikram. I let out a slow breath. The betrayal ran deep, yes. But what hit me harder was something else, a kind of mourning. Mourning the version of my life I thought was real. What about Ritesh? I asked finally. Does he even know he has a son? She shook her head. He moved to Singapore. We haven't spoken in years. I don't even know if he'd care. So now what? I asked. What happens next? She looked up at me, her voice trembling. That's not for me to decide. All I know is, Ariv loves you. You're his world. And whatever happens, please don't punish him for my mistake. I stood there for a moment, unsure what to say. What do you say when the foundation of your life has turned out to be sand? I walked away in silence, her words echoing behind me. Please don't punish him for my mistake. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying every moment I had with Ariv, every laugh, every bedtime story, every scraped knee I had bandaged. And I asked myself the hardest question I've ever faced. Was I still his father, even if I wasn't his dad? I spent the next few days in a fog. Not quite numb, not fully functioning. Just existing. I still dropped Ariv at school every morning. Still packed his favorite snacks. Still helped him brush his teeth at night. But inside, I felt like a stranger in my own life. Like I was playing a role that no longer belonged to me. One night, after putting him to bed, I sat in the living room of our 2 BHK flat in HSR layout, staring at the photo on the wall, Ariv on my shoulders at Cubbon Park, both of us laughing like the world was perfect. I knew I had to make a decision. Not for Neha. Not for myself. But for that little boy who believed I was his dad. And truth be told, I was. In every way that mattered. But I couldn't just sweep everything under the rug either. The truth was out. And pretending it didn't change anything would be another kind of lie. So I made a list. Yeah, an actual list. I'm a data analyst by profession, I deal with facts, not feelings. So I needed clarity. Option 1, cut ties. Walk away. Start over. Option 2, stay. Raise him, love him, and pretend the DNA doesn't matter. Option 3, talk to a lawyer. Explore joint custody. Option 4, tell Ariv the truth someday when he's ready. I circled option 3. I didn't want to punish Ariv for what Neha did. But I also couldn't live under the same roof with someone who had lied to me for 5 years. I needed to reclaim my life, but without abandoning the only real part of it that still mattered, him. So I called my friend Rajiv, a lawyer from college. He heard me out in silence, then said, "You've been his father in every legal and emotional sense. That counts. But it's complicated, Vikram. We'll have to tread carefully." Next, I sat down with Neha. "I'm moving out," I told her. "But I want shared custody. I want to be there for Ariv." She looked surprised. "Even after everything?" "He's still my son," I said. "And you don't get to take that from me." She nodded slowly. "Okay. I'll agree to it." We met with a mediator. Set up a co-parenting plan. Monday to Wednesday with me, Thursday to Sunday with her. Weekends alternated. We both agreed not to tell Ariv anything yet, not until he was old enough to understand without breaking. I found a small rented flat in Koramangala. Nothing fancy. 1 bedroom, a small study, and just enough space to keep Ariv's things, a foldable bed, his Legos, his favorite comic books. The first night he stayed with me, he ran around the flat inspecting everything. Then he flopped on the bed and said, "I like this place. But it's a little quiet without Mom." "Yeah," I smiled, ruffling his hair. "But quiet can be nice sometimes, right?" He nodded. "As long as you're here." That night, as he fell asleep beside me, snoring softly, I realized something. This wasn't the life I imagined. But it was still a life worth fighting for. And I wasn't done fighting yet. It's been 2 years since that night Neha confessed. Ariv is 7 now. Taller. Louder. A little more mischievous. He's into dinosaurs, space documentaries, and the Marvel Universe. Every time he explains something he learned in school, his eyes light up like he's teaching me the secrets of the universe. He still calls me Appa. And I still answer without hesitation. People often ask me, friends, coworkers, even my mother, what will you do when he finds out the truth? I think about it every single day. I'm not hiding from that moment. I know it'll come. Someday he'll be old enough to start asking questions that need honest answers. And when that day comes, I've promised myself I won't lie. But I won't let him feel like he was born of a mistake either. Because he wasn't. He's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Neha and I were civil. Not close, but not at war. Co-parenting is messy, but we've found a rhythm. Sometimes I still catch her watching me when I pick Arab up, like she's wondering what life could have been if she'd just told the truth sooner. Honestly, I don't hate her anymore. Hating her would mean holding on to the past. And I've decided I'd rather hold on to the boy who still climbs into my lap when he's scared during thunderstorms. Last month, we had our first big father-son fight. Arab accidentally broke my laptop screen, smashed it with his toy Hulk while reenacting a scene. I lost it. Yelled at him. Sent him to his room. He cried real, hiccuping sobs. 5 minutes later, I was sitting on the floor outside his room, guilt eating me alive. "I'm sorry," I said through the door. "I got mad, but I love you. I'll always love you. No matter what." He opened the door, eyes red, lip trembling. "Even if I mess up again?" he asked. "Even then," I whispered, pulling him into a hug. That's fatherhood, isn't it? It's not about DNA or who signed the birth certificate. It's not about biology or names on a hospital form. It's about being there over and over again, through the mess, the noise, the ordinary. I chose to stay. I chose to love. And I choose it every single day. I don't know if Ritesh, his biological father, will ever show up. Maybe one day Arif will want to find him. And if he does, I won't stand in his way. But I'll be standing right there, beside him, like I always have. Because fatherhood isn't something that's given. It's something that's earned. And whatever name biology might give him, in his heart and mind, I'll always be Appa.